Sean Patton. Welcome into the podcast, sir. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Brett. The pleasure, actually, as they say, is all mine.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
We'll see how we wind up at the end of our conversation. So, your publicist, this is exactly what she told me, and I quote, he has 1 million projects coming out and he has a lot to talk about. So what's been going on with you, Sean? We're coming out of the pandemic. Well, we're pretty much out. Everybody's back to normal. You're touring. Everybody's touring. What's been going on with you? What's been keeping you busy?
I mean, first and foremost, I think it's really awesome that my mom calls herself my publicist now. And it's not, no, it's kidding. Her name's Samantha. She does a great job. She's my manager. That's not my mom. That's my manager. I just realized I just called my mom. I said, I confused the audience. Like, wait, is his mom named Samantha?
I thought you were just being funny, personally. I mean, it could have worked either way. My mother would, if my mom were my publicist, she'd be like, oh, just, who cares what he's doing? Just go see it. Just go fucking see it. But no, I have a manager named Samantha, and that's who hit you up. And yeah, I mean, it's, there's an old saying that is, when it rains, it pours. And, there's just a lot, the pandemic kind of slowed everybody's life down, even though here in New York, we were doing outdoor shows starting roughly about a year ago, outdoors on rooftops and in parks and sometimes like on the side of on a sidewalk, which comedy doesn't belong on, it really doesn't. But we did it, and now it's like, I'm doing an album recording August 5th through 7th at the Helium Comedy Club in Portland, Oregon. Excited about that. That's a great club, and it's with the Helium Network. They're at albums. They do great stuff. And then I'm recording or shooting a special in New Orleans in February. Wow.
And these are 2 different hours because I've just been, building, but I haven't recorded much in the past, 5 years, and that's my fault. I'm an exceptionalist. You know what I'm saying? Like, I overthink and try and make everything perfect, but you can't be perfect. You just gotta, at a certain point, you just gotta trust your creation and be like, get out there and go make something of yourself, bits.
Yeah, but I don't think that you're the only one. Like, I've talked to other comedians, like Steve Burns comes to mind, for example. Like, he's not, it's not a dig, he's not one that does like a tour and then an album and then a special and then a tour and then a special, like cranking these things out. And he said something kind of interesting. It what you said made me think of the same thing. It's like, pretty soon it's just like an hour in front of a curtain, in front of an audience, just one more thing. And if that works for some people, that's great. I want to ask you, you mentioned the comedy on the sidewalks, which I saw people doing that, which I found interesting. I found the Zoom shows to be even more interesting. But did you do any Zoom stuff or rooftop shows? Or, I saw a few people doing that.
Oh, certainly, bro. Certainly. I did a lot of Zoom shows, and Zoom shows were interesting. Because I don't know, they were. It really does expose the level of insecurity any comedian or performer is under at that is influenced by at that moment. Because like a lot of the time you are not. Of course, it's nothing. It's not even close to being similar to a live performance. It's not even arguable. It's crazy. It's like, there's no vibe. You're in a room by yourself and there's people online. And even if you have the volume cranked all the way the fuck up, it doesn't matter. Like, you can't really hear the laughter. You know what I mean? Like, and so you find yourself a lot of times being like, okay, like, I know that's good. I just have to trust it. That's the one thing I enjoyed about Zoom shows was it made me trust material more.
Interesting.
And and it made me figure out which bits I didn't trust as much because, and then there were bits that I wrote during the Zoom show era that the first time I did them live was like, let's hope this Okay, I hope this works. It's like the first day you send a homeschool child to real school, where you're like, oh God, I hope it knows how to interact with the other bits, But
That's funny.
ultimately, yeah, but like the sidewalk shows were, oof, that stuff was rough, man. It was a rough. Outdoor shows they work, but they have to be in the right situations. They have to be like a comedy show. People have to know what they're getting into.
Yeah. I mean, I
You know?
think at that point, people were probably just desperate for content, and people
Sure.
like yourselves were like pulling their hair out because nobody expected this to last as long as it did. It's interesting.
Right.
Did you do drive-in shows at all? Because I know some people were doing that. I heard that was really wild. Cars honking, when
Yeah, yeah.
people were telling jokes and, all kinds of crazy stuff.
It was crazy. I did not do I never did a drive-in show. Those seem to be predominantly West Coast or like other parts of the country. Out here, now there were a couple of drive-in shows early on, I remember, but they kind of faded because people realized, here in New York, not that many people. The car culture is not that huge out here.
Sure. I mean, not a lot of people don't drive. I mean, especially
A lot, yeah.
if you're living in the city. I mean, some might own a car, but I digress. It's interesting because when I talk to different comedians, they all obviously have a process, but for you, it's a little bit different. Like are you one to just kind of write and write and write and then try things out? And are you finding yourself constantly working on things and, kind of tweaking and twisting before you decide that you want to present it to the public?
It could be a combination of the because I find that sometimes you say something and it just comes out ready.
Okay.
Or you have a thought and it's just there already. That's rare for me, but it happens. And then sometimes I'll have an idea or say something out loud where I'm like, oh, I know that's something. I can also tell it's going to take me a while to extract the honey from it. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
And you just kind of, I approach everything with the same sort of, I keep it fresh. Excuse me. As you can hear, my voice is just now adjusting to as many live shows as they suddenly are. We're back. But I like to keep everything fresh for me because I'm the one who has to perform it. And if it's fresh for me, then it's going to be even fresher for the audience. It's going to be even more enjoyable for them because I have to enjoy it first, right? And I see that a lot in other comedians, and I don't critique them on it. I don't even tell them. Because I feel like it's everybody's got their own system, but like I can tell when someone's been doing a bit for too long. There's just a natural sort of like autopilot that can set in. There's sort of a natural sort of subconscious boredom on their behalf where they're just like, I'm just saying this again. And I've been there. I've been in that headspace before, and I hate it. I don't like it. So I will constantly be every bit. To me, no bit is ever done. It is never completed until you record it and put it out there. Then it's out there. Whatever form it's in, then that's the form it's in. But I like to constantly be tinkering with everything. I like to constantly be like trying to find a better way to word it, trying to find a better way, a faster way to get to the punchline, or sometimes a slower way, sometimes to make the build that more tense. And then when you get to the punchline, bam, it's a bigger explosion. Like I constantly look for ways to improve everything. And that can get frustrating because it means I might take something that works and just disassemble it completely and then rebuild it. And it doesn't work as well. But now I'm like, shit, I don't want to go back. So I can only go forward. So now I've got to disassemble it again and reconstruct it in a way where it's better than it was when it worked. And that sometimes can take a while, but I find it's worth it.
Yeah, I find that very interesting because I've seen comedians perform and I've followed them for a long time. And you hear, specials from 5, 6, 7 years ago, but then you go see them. And then sometimes some of those jokes make their way back in there. I don't know if they've redone them or it's just because they know it's material that's going to work. Do you find that as a comedian, just overall, that can be one of the biggest challenges, because obviously if you have something that works, you know it's going to work. You do it, you know people are going to laugh. It's like the greatest hits of Sean. Like,
Right.
do you find yourself almost subconsciously wanting to even avoid that, maybe because you know it's going to take a lot of work to reconstruct a joke, or maybe use a different economy of words to keep it fresh, if that makes sense?
No, that makes total sense. I mean, I could definitely say I don't think there's anything wrong with repeating material in recordings. Like, you know, it seems like maybe years ago, maybe back in the 80s or 90s, that once you recorded something, it was just out there and that was it, as far as like ever touching it again. But like nowadays, I think you could probably get away with doing something in 2 or 3 different recordings, just because there's so many options now.
Sure.
And people, not everybody's going to see, like, the fact that there are people who have HBO specials and it didn't really change their lives that much. You know, it just speaks to the volume of how much volume there is.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. But I know for me personally, I do, once I record something, like record it, the chances of me repeating it on another recording, it all depends on the context of the recording. You know, but like I like to, and if I'm going to do it, I like to at least improve upon it. I like to at least rework it. Like for example, there's a bit I have now that I recorded for Australian TV back in 2018, right? And I kind of stopped doing it after that. And then about 3 months ago, I did it again, just kind of like in the moment. I was at a show and it just kind of came out. And I was like, huh. And then I started doing it again. And I feel I vastly improved upon it. So now I'm going to record that bit in my album next month. And yes, it is the same bit from that Australian TV taping, but it is a better version of it, in my opinion.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I find what you do so fascinating because of that reason.
Mm-hmm.
You can take something and it's funny, present it, tell it, and then go back and switch it around and retool it. What part of the process do you find the most challenging as a comic? Do you find writing premises challenging, finding points of view? Like, obviously there's X number of premises that can exist, but then taking it from that to like stretching it out, writing the jokes, maybe putting tags on it, and then turning it into Sean Patton. Like, when I go pay to see you at a comedy club, this is the show that we're getting. Like, you've taken it from concept to presentation.
I mean, that's a very good question. And I'd say, honestly, the what I'm about to say is going to sound fucking insane. But I think at a certain point, to be a successful comedian, you have to stop relying on the audience's reaction to know whether a joke is funny or not. And that's crazy. That's crazy, because a lot of people can misinterpret a sentence like that and be like, oh, you don't have to get laughs? Cool. I'll just go up there and say whatever the hell I want, and who cares? Not what I'm saying at all. Yes, you still want to get laughs. Obviously, it's the point. Yes, you still want to make people laugh, but there's a way about how you perform and how you deliver and how you speak at a show that has to come from within. The confidence has to come from here, knowing that, because I've seen this happen too many times, and it really bothers me when I'm watching a show, when a comic tells a joke and it doesn't get the reaction they want, and then they comment on it. The comedian has to be like, well, that usually murders, or, well, okay, well, that killed last week, or, well, that was, I don't know what your problem is. That joke's amazing. And I myself have been guilty of that. But what I've learned through performing, not only here in the States, but I've performed in a majority of, I haven't performed everywhere on the planet Earth, but I've been to other continents. You learn that, like, people laugh differently.
Sure.
It's not always a ha. It's not always that. Sometimes it really is like a quiet, sort of reserved. Some people, like the Brits, you'll do a show in certain parts of the UK, and you'll be up there thinking, I am bombing right now. So you just sort of get through it. And then afterwards, there's a horde of people like, oh, mate, that was brilliant. And you're like, why weren't you laughing? And they're like, we were. And then you sort of realize, like, yeah, some people, laughter can be internal. Some people laugh. It's like, it's not always this bulbous, bombastic, loud sound. Yes, that's the best version. Yes, that's the one we all want to hear constantly. But you're not always going to get that. So you've got to have a confidence about you where you know, like, if I do this bit and it doesn't get this reaction I want, that was my plan. The audience has got to feel that from you. They got to feel like, okay, nothing shakes this comedian. Nothing deters them. And slowly but surely, they will put more and more of their faith in you to where by the end of that show, they are 1,000% glommed on whatever you're doing. And then you feel that, and now you're giving them 1,000% of yourself. And it's this beautiful, beautiful mingling. It's not always what happens, you know?
No, I totally get it. It's interesting. I like how you caveated on the fact that a seasoned comic, if you're like an open micer and it's like your first month or two out, I think you're like, I think Nate Bargatze said, it's like you want people to be laughing at your jokes. But if you're doing this 10, 15, 20 years and you don't always get a laugh where you think you should or not, it's okay, because that kind of silence is golden, because you haven't lost the room or the audience, but you're just, it just comes with experience, right? I mean, I think that's the best way I can explain it. Like, I'm sure you take a Seinfeld or a Chappelle or whoever, if they go and perform and they don't get laughs every night, I'm certain they're like yourself and probably aren't even thinking about, well, did I offend, or did I, it's just, comes with doing the job for as long as you've done it, right? Because that makes what you do as an expert.
Well, also, like, I mean, there's this one bit I was doing I still do it. I'm actually going to do it on the special later the year, but like, there's a bit I was doing about, it was about the idea of bouncers being, about why we don't see any female bouncers in America. Okay. Because other countries, you go to Australia, or England, there's a lot of female bouncers. You just never see that here. And I remember I did it, and it would always kind of do okay. And I remember I did it one show, and Mark Norman was on after me, and that bit just kind of it just bombed. And I was like, ugh. And then I remember like two nights in a row. It was like, then later on that week, it was 2 shows in a row. Mark and I were on the same show, and the first show, I know he was watching my set, and that bit ate it again. And then the next night, same lineup, the bit ate it again. And then there was like it was like 4 times in a row. I remember in my head being like, if Mark's here, that bit might bomb. It might be like is it his presence? But then like, and then it bombed again, and Mark's an old friend. And then like a year and a half later, out of nowhere, we're just sitting at the table at the cellar, and he's like, hey, why don't you do that bit about female bouncers anymore? And I was like, oh, and I was like, because you saw it ate it like 5 times. I couldn't. And he was like, what, are you crazy? He's like, I didn't eat it. He's like, I quote it. He's like, I've told people about that joke. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, dude, you were in your head. That bit was not eating it. And then I did it again, like that, not that night, like a couple nights later, and just kind of like did it with this sort of, I let go of it. I wasn't holding it so tightly, if that makes sense. I just sort of like presented it, and I was like, oh my God, this killed. And then I realized, looking back, what I was expecting from the bit was so much more, when in reality, I should have just been doing it and been letting it breathe on stage. And Mark's like, a buddy, we go back, and he's a guy doing 5 spots a night and just crank it out. I get one of the best joke writers in the country and in the world, arguably. And like, it took him just kind of getting back into my head, being like, no, man, you weren't bombing. That bit was not bombing. And that kind of made me realize, like, oh, it's my expectations versus the audience's. And you've got to temper that. You've got to like trust in yourself, trust in your material, but also, to counter what I was just saying or to add to it, don't expect everything out of your mouth to change the world. because then you might not notice when it actually does. That makes sense.
Wow, that's very profound. I think that can be applied to anything, my friend. My God.
Very much. Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
mean, and Mark's coming on the show next week, so I'm excited.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah. Mark's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. I've been looking forward to it for a while. Well, there's a lot of things about what you do fascinating, but you do your comedy, you tour, but you also have a podcast. I would love to talk about that as we wrap here about the podcast, sure. 5 Words. It's on the All Things Comedy Network with Caitlin Cook, which is hilarious, by the way. And we'll make sure people can access that in our show notes.
Sure. I mean, it's a great podcast. It's a game we used to do at bars where we would just ask our friends, give us 5 words from a random story from today. Doesn't matter. And we'll guess it. And we're never right. The point isn't to be right. If you can honestly guess someone's accurate story from just 5 random words of it, you're a psychic. You should have an OnlyFans page.
OnlyFans.
Yeah, but you send me 5 words, but also nude. But and then we just started doing it as a podcast. It's been a great time. And All Things Comedy Network, they're awesome. So a lot of other great podcasts on that network as well. I also have another. Can I plug a second podcast?
Plug whatever you want, my friend. It's all about you, man.
Oh, I have another. Thank you. I have another podcast called Raw Beef with Tanael Joachim and Wilfred Podwell. We do it on the Helium Network. Helium also has a podcast network, and it's the 3 of us, 3 comedians, and every week we just talk about something we got beef with, and we cook the beef, which is just talk it out till we come to a conclusion where it's solved. We're not solving anything, but just making it easier for us to sleep at night, I guess,
Well, I mean, hey, with this day and age, I think that's really the best that you can ask for. I mean, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I think podcasting is such a broad spectrum, especially, a lot of comedians who do them. It's like just another outlet, to have that creativity flow and really just to be able to be yourself, I think. And looking back at your career, I mean, everything that you've done, I think, my God, I think that's what makes you appealing as a comic. Is one of the many things is that you're honest about what you talk about, and you're you. You know what I mean? Like there's not a TV version, and then like a podcast version, and then a comedy club version. Like what you see is what you get, and I feel like, true authenticity is what sells. To be honest, in my opinion.
You're 100. Oh, dude, totally. Yeah. Authentic is even if someone's an asshole, you still want them to be authentic. You still want an authentic asshole, like
it's funny.
Which you are not, brother.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, like I think of Anthony Jeselnik, who has this persona on stage, who's like a sniper, but really even in person, he's just the normal guy, very kind, but I think he knows people want that from him when they're interviewing him. So he gives it to them because it's kind of like, an expectation, I guess, as a publicist or an interviewer or a journalist, because it just makes for the natural thing for people to be drawn to. I love it. You have so many things coming out. There's the album, there's the special, the podcast. If people want to listen to that or connect with you on social media, find out where you're going to be in a town near you, where can that be done?
Social media, follow me on Instagram. It's at Mr. Sean Patton. Or just at Mr. Sean Patton. I was going to add a .com to the end of it, but there isn't one. But as far as .com is concerned, my website, seanpatton.com. I've got a bunch of tour dates coming up. This month, I'm in, Brea, California, Hollywood, California, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, St. Louis, Missouri. And then the album recording at Helium in Portland, August 5th through 7th. So,
and if you're ever in the Bay Area again, I know you've been out here a few times.
Yeah, there will be a return.
Yeah, I think you usually hit Cobb's or Punchline or maybe both.
Punchline usually, yeah.
Yeah, that's just right up the road for me. Fantastic, man. This has been an honor to chat with you. I love you, man. I love your comedy, and I think I'm excited to see what's next. Thanks for joining me, Sean. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much for having me, Brett.